All right, thank you all for joining today's webinar session on investing in safety, where we discuss some of the unique considerations and factors associated with the replacement of facility fire alarm systems. This will be the first of 5 sessions on fire alarm systems, with additional information to come at the end of today's webinar. As we are going through today's session, please post any questions that you may have to the Q&A tab at the top of the Teams window. My name is Sean LaBelle, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Design Services with Jensen Hughes. Today, our session presenters include Larry Reitz and Mike Johnson. Larry is our Global Service Line Leader for Fire Detection Alarm Systems, and Mike is a Senior Vice President that oversees Jensen Hughes Strategic Accounts and Commercial Operations. Between Mike and Larry, they bring more than 70 years of fire protection system design and consulting experience.
So we're going to start our webinar today with a little bit about Jensen Hughes. Jensen Hughes is a global fire protection engineering and life safety co-consulting firm, and we can provide so much more. Our history dates back to 1939. Jensen Hughes has over 1,900 employees consisting of consultants, engineers, and scientists, all with a mission to reduce your risk. We have over 100 offices around the world and have provided our core services on over 100,000 projects. Of those 1,900 employees, we have over 450 of us on industry technical committees. And what does that mean for our clients? It means that we can bring real live subject matter expertise to address any of your life safety needs. Our learning objectives today are going to be threefold. We're going to be discussing assessing your system and how do you know if your fire alarm system needs upgrade or replacement, successful replacement preparation, and the critical replacement factors, including the 4 factors that should influence a quality fire alarm system replacement plan. At this time, I'm going to turn the technical part of this presentation over to Larry Reitz.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I know we have many that are still joining, so welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. My guess is that you have joined us today because you have and are probably concerned about your fire alarm system. My guess is the more you know about your fire alarm system, the more you may hate it. We find that to be true with many that are out there. You're not alone. Many owners, facility managers, managers of engineering, directors of engineering in buildings across the country are worried about their fire alarm systems. You know, really our fire alarm system should be a silent partner, protecting us silently while we do our business. The problem or truth is that fire alarm systems over time can grow to be a significant distraction to your operations. Thus, the feelings you may have about your individual fire alarm system. And it's not just one type of system. It's really all types of systems that we see that with. So what we're going to try to talk to you today is give you some really solid information about fire alarm system upgrades and replacements. You know, nationwide, there are tens of thousands of buildings with aging fire alarm and other fire protection systems, which were installed in years past as the most modern of devices at the time. Now, while meeting the need at the time, when looked at through today's technological lens, they may appear aged, inadequate, ineffective, or even non-functional. Now, many things may create the need for an owner or a facility manager to upgrade, to retrofit, or even completely replace an aging fire alarm system or fire safety equipment. You know, as age increases, troubles increase, and even total system failures are common. If these critical life safety systems fail, they create a serious interruption to your business continuity, including the potential loss of revenue, or even worse, sometimes the potential loss of reputation. Over time, system maintenance costs can increase, sometimes significantly, with some trying to create Band-Aid solutions to significant problems. With system components that are no longer available, systems that become out of service life must be replaced, and listed repair options may not be available. Perhaps a fire alarm control unit or a significant master controller or other board or card in the system needs to be replaced or upgraded. And in some jurisdictions, that may require the entire system to be brought up to code. Additionally, other issues may cause an owner or facility manager to review the need to replace their systems, including a change of occupancy or use where older systems have no flexibility or even capacity to accommodate such changes. Older systems are frequently incompatible with newer needs and new technologies like carbon monoxide and emergency communication or mass notification needs. The ability to interface with new security systems or even new mechanical equipment or systems. Aging fire alarm systems are often non-compliant with legal mandates, like the height of manual pull stations, equivalent facilitation with visual notification, carbon monoxide, and other related issues. And a significant building remodel or addition can expose the limitations of an older fire alarm system that formerly did meet the needs of that facility. Now on this screen, we featured 3 pictures. These are real pictures. This is really what goes on in today's world, and perhaps you've seen something similar in your facility. All challenges associated with aging fire alarm systems. So what can be done? Well, ultimately you get to a point where either an upgrade or a replacement needs to be considered for your fire alarm system. So we're not going to hide or bury the lead here. We're going to give you the top 3 reasons right now why a fire alarm system needs to be upgraded or replaced. These top 3 can be kind of a guiding touchstone, a kind of a touch with reality for you to consider what situation you're in and what you are facing. So when do you upgrade or replace your system? Well, the number 1 issue is age. As with all forms of technology, the age of your fire alarm system is critical in identifying the need for replacement or upgrade. So let's look at some of the components of age that might help with this. First, if you have a fire alarm control unit that is more than 25 years old or was installed before the year 2000, you need to consider or make a plan to replace that system. Now, when we say that, are we just being homers? Are we trying to sell fire alarm systems here? No, Jensen Hughes doesn't sell fire alarm systems. But the issue is the components. So many of the components that are used in the 1980s and 1990s in our fire alarm systems are simply not made anymore. The actual chips that are placed on the cards, the technology that communicates inside those cards is simply not made anymore. Much like you're not carrying around a cell phone from 1988 anymore, the same is true for your fire alarm control unit. So there's a technological reason here, and it kind of starts right in about the year 2000. Now, it gets even more granular than that, though. When we look at smoke detection that is attached to a fire alarm control unit, if we get over 20 to 25 years old, we need to start considering replacing that smoke detection. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. Now, first of all, to be clear, as long as a smoke detector, which is attached to a control unit, passes its annual inspection, you can keep it in service. However, the UL product requirements for that smoke detection have completely changed in the last 7 years. So that smoke detector that's 25 years old, while functionally still operational, doesn't meet the needs of today's construction, the construction types that we use in today's world, and it also can increasingly become a nuisance alarm because of that aging component inside that detector. This is also true when it comes to smoke alarms. Smoke alarms are the kind installed in your home, the kind of alarm that does the smoke detection and notification all in one unit. That is a smoke alarm. For many years, the rule in code has been 10 years. You must replace them after 10 years. So if you have smoke alarms that were installed 2015 or earlier, they must be replaced. That is actually the rule. I recently stayed in a hotel. I was teaching a group of young test and inspect individuals on how to test and inspect fire alarms. And the room I was in, the hotel room I was in, I took down the smoke detector because it looked quite aged. It was 27 years old. That smoke detector was older than any of the students I had in my test and inspect class. So we need to think about that, and that is a very key rule to understand. This is also true with carbon monoxide detection. The code requirement is also a 10-year lifespan on carbon monoxide detection and alarms. Now, notice I have 3 dates there that you need to be concerned with: 2015, 18, and 20. The reason is when carbon monoxide detection and carbon monoxide alarms first hit the market, they had a 5-year carbon monoxide element in them. The second generation of carbon monoxide detection had a 7-year element in it, and the latest on the market now have 10-year elements in them. So you really need to look at those individual components and see what components are inside your carbon monoxide detection and carbon monoxide alarm. Our second top 3 for upgrade or replacement is deficiencies and troubles. As systems age, the system may experience increased troubles, including wiring and operational failures. These may be experienced with increasing frequently or often at unexpected times. Now, while these functional and even wiring failures may be able to be repaired at the time, these troubles and deficiencies can mount up and affect the overall operation of the system. As we do our yearly inspections, we may find that devices are failing, and maybe we can replace them one for one. But eventually, those devices become unavailable, and the device we need to plug in today may not be compatible with the panel that we have installed. We also note that, are you as an owner keeping track of some of these functional failures? Are you seeing trends? Do you have a log or a record? Are you seeing a certain trend with certain types of devices, or maybe in certain types of rooms in your facility? Our third big consideration is a change in occupancy or a change in use. Anytime we change a building, we need to re-examine our buildings, right? As buildings change and adapt to new tenants, to new operations, the fire alarm system needs to change to meet those needs. For example, some business occupancies, like a typical office building, may suddenly become an educational occupancy, housing the local college or a local school to provide educational needs. Well, this changes the fire alarm system requirements for that space. Well, think also about how you've changed your occupant load. Did you go from an office occupancy, maybe a B occupancy that has one occupant load, to maybe an assembly occupancy that has many more people in it? And what do you store today in your building that you didn't before? Think about lithium-ion batteries, thinking about computer systems or servers, and other types of considerations, things you do today in your building that you didn't do 20 or 30 years ago. So these are the top 3: age, deficiencies and troubles, and any kind of change of occupancy or use. They are absolutes when considering to whether you should upgrade or replace your fire alarm system. So that leads us to the next question, right? You need to answer the question, does my fire alarm system need to be upgraded, or does it need to be completely replaced? Well, this is directly related to what challenges you may be facing when needing to upgrade or replace a fire alarm system. You need to understand what your available funds are, right? What is available to you when you make this decision? What funds are available now or in the future, and what kind of time is needed? Each of these are equally important, right? And they both have a cost. And you may be surprised at the size of both of these items when you go and examine those against your fire alarm system. Perhaps you face a situation where, due to funds, maintenance is always deferred, and thus systems are overdue for needed replacement. We found this really occurred in the COVID years, where maintenance was deferred because of lack of staff and lack of funds. Excuse me. Perhaps you believe because your buildings are always occupied that they cannot have their systems upgraded in an owner or occupant acceptable manner. Maybe you run an airport that is open 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, or 20 hours a day. How would you do a fire alarm system replacement in an occupancy like that? Perhaps these important systems that you have do not have an existing system inventory or a code compliance audit or analysis. So you don't really understand what funds and time may be needed to upgrade your system. Or you may be concerned that due to building changes, they cannot be replaced or upgraded in a compliant manner without an extremely complicated effort, perhaps even requiring the closing of operations during the replacement. However, a danger exists. If you wait until a system or a significant system component fails, thereby requiring you to make an emergency replacement, that is always a costlier decision than a planned replacement. In fact, studies show that an emergency replacement of a fire alarm system can cost up to 50% more than a planned replacement. Waiting until a component failure will result in a significantly more cost due to the emergency nature of the replacement. Now, you as an owner, or maybe you're representing an owner, you may not want to budget for a fire alarm upgrade or replacement project, but I guarantee you certainly do not want to pay for fire watch, overtime installation, and other similar emergency replacement costs. And you may receive other direction to perhaps rapidly deploy new technology like battery energy storage systems or charging stations. Or you must replace other building systems like access control, security, CCTV, building automation systems, or elevators. Your building may significantly be non-compliant with current code. Even not having compliant visual notification systems, or maybe you have non-voice like horns and chimes notification when you really need voice communication. Either way, you need to be prepared. You don't want to buckle up because you could be for a bumpy ride whether you upgrade or replace. Well, how do you plan? Those are some considerations, and I didn't want to start with the bad news. But there is hope. You can plan for a replacement. So how can we start that process? How can you do that? With either an upgrade or a total replacement, you need a solid plan. Using the principles of our top 3 slide that we had just moments ago, you need to be able to identify at an early stage, long before failure, that you need to address the upgrade or replacement of your fire alarm system. You got to come to grips with that, right? And that can put you in a better place. Maybe that realization is today's webinar. Maybe those slides triggered you and you realized, yep, it's time for me to make a plan. Well, once identified, you need to start the budgeting process. Early identification and budgeting is key from both a fund standpoint and a time standpoint. Success in planning for a fire alarm system replacement requires a commitment from many stakeholders. So you need to identify and then communicate with those stakeholders. This includes a verification, excuse me, a verification that the goals are the same as when the original system was installed. What are some of those goals that you really need to meet? Well, those goals would include life safety. That's part and parcel. We're trying to protect the individuals inside our building. Property protection. If you didn't have that property, certainly your business continuity would be at risk. The reliability and lifespan of the systems we have, including your fire alarm system. Equipment standardization and total operational cost. What will it really cost you to install any given piece of equipment? See, facility owners and management want to make sure that their goals are met, and including verifying that all the systems meet all the minimum codes and long-term operational reliability, and that the equipment life cycle is sufficiently long enough to avoid more recurring costs. Unfortunately, management often focuses only on the initial outlay of costs in order to provide the least expensive use of capital funds, while not thinking about the long-term operational costs or modern technological improvements that could reduce long-term costs that are normally attributed to maintenance budgets. This is really where a complete audit of your system can really come in handy in discussing the reality of your situation and what the viable options are that exist for you. Providing a quality fire alarm system replacement plan always involves balancing the risk and the cost of using and the best possible fire alarm system alternative to try to mitigate that risk. So how do we meet the mission effectiveness in this way? Well, a good fire alarm replacement plan will consider the 4 factors that affect mission effectiveness and your operational reliability. Let's discuss these 4 factors briefly. Excuse me. First, design. System design, especially a replacement design, is a critical step to operational reliability that cannot be overlooked. Many times an alarm installer or vendor will agree to design the system for little or no fee, which ultimately proves the adage, you get what you pay for. Generally, the reason for the offer is to ensure that the installer or the vendor or the manufacturer's equipment will be purchased. A better option would be to use a qualified fire protection engineer and fire protection professional who can take a more holistic approach, who can look at all the factors, especially those outside the fire alarm system that interface with that system to create a much more effective design. Equipment selection, though, is key. Selecting quality equipment will provide a foundation for a quality system that can be maintained for the long term. Now, the amount of quality fire alarm control equipment on the market has increased in recent years, with many manufacturers adding networking, voice options, and other options to their product line. This variety should allow you to obtain quality equipment at a competitive price without simply going to the lowest bidder. However, this requires that you have a good understanding of the various manufacturers and their various strengths and weaknesses. Again, you should get the assistance of an unbiased industry professional that can help you vet the options that are available. For instance, what new technologies exist that can lower your ongoing inspection and maintenance costs? Do you know that there's technology that allows you to do that? Well, some vendors may be open to say that and others may not. The third factor is installation. When considering who will install your replacement fire alarm system, there's much to consider. Will you trust the system vendor who may be very well qualified on their fire alarm system, but may be lacking in true installation skills, physically installing pipe, wire, boxes, etc.? Or will you trust an electrical contractor with terrific installation skills, but maybe they lack the knowledge of low voltage or fire alarm specific installation techniques? Are in-house installers really qualified to provide the designed system on the required timetable with all of the other things that they may have to control? Really, the best situation for installation is one that has a partnership between the fire alarm designer, the fire alarm system installer, and the fire alarm system vendor, and specifically the programmer. If those three individuals can work together in an effective, cohesive team, in this way, the design is matched closely to the installation needs, and the programming is effective and accurate to the design. And all of these individuals should be intimately involved in the creation of a system migration plan and the final acceptance of the system. Finally, maintenance. The ultimate success of a replacement fire alarm system project is measured years later in the long-time reliability and operational effectiveness of the new system. Will the new system require a significantly larger amount of inspection, test, and maintenance time and effort? Does technology allow your system to test itself? Did you know that there's self-testing smoke detectors now? Did you know that there's self-testing notification appliances? Did you know that there's one-person testing protocols available right now, today? Can system additions or modifications be made easily? Are only certain individuals or vendors allowed to perform the required annual testing of the system? Establishing a testing and maintenance plan that will complement the facility's maintenance program may assist in ensuring management's commitment and approval of that replacement system. And following the testing and maintenance plan will increase the life of the system and provide optimal return on investment. Well, in the end, let's give you some final thoughts. There's much to consider when making the decision to upgrade or replace your fire alarm system. And as we conclude, I want you to think about these 4 principles. First, seek to understand the costs and risks of the options that you want to select. What is the true cost of maintaining your existing system for the foreseeable future? What options exist for upgrade versus replacement of your system? And what are some of the factors we discussed that may push you in one direction or another? Creating an upgrade or replacement plan based on the principles discussed today will guide an owner or operator through what can be a very difficult process. This requires engagement from stakeholders and an agreement on primary objectives like life safety, code compliance, and meeting new needs. Ultimately, creating a strong partnership between the owner, system designer, manufacturer, vendor, installer, and the authority having jurisdiction will produce the best outcomes. Once the decision to upgrade or replace your system has been made, it's time to consider what additional technology can be or must be built into your system to meet the future expansion needs of new and emerging technology and make the best use of funds with a strong return on investment. And of course, think about how we here at Jensen Hughes can help you to navigate this challenging process. Sean?
Thank you, Larry. Before we move on to the Q&A session, we'd like to highlight additional upcoming episodes. Now, we've really only scratched the surface on fire alarm replacements. We have so much more to offer. So before you go, look at what we have coming up. Our Investing in Safety webinar series continues with 4 specialty episodes. These episodes will delve into the unique challenges and nuanced requirements of fire alarm systems in hospitality facilities such as hotels, resorts, and entertainment complexes, higher education campuses of all sizes, and healthcare environments, including hospitals, ambulatory care, and nursing care facilities. Each of these webinars will provide tailored insights for your specific facility needs. And we'll have a fourth episode that will focus on facilities that have integrated smoke control systems. The interfaces between the building fire alarm system, smoke control features present unique challenges when upgrading or replacing the fire alarm system that integrates with these critical life safety systems. We'll share the registration links by email following today's session, or you can scan the QR code shown on the screen to register. Now moving into the Q&A session, we have a few questions that we'd like to respond to. And as you're going through this and as you're reflecting on the session from today, if there's any additional questions or anything specific that any of the attendees would like to discuss with us directly, we have our email addresses provided on the question screen. Please feel free to reach out to us directly. The first question that we have, I'll work through in the order that we received, Larry, is can you define upgrade versus replacement for a fire alarm system?
Sure. The simple way to define that is upgrading a system will be using the same manufacturer, but with newer technology available from that same manufacturer. It's also sometimes it's called backwards compatibility, where a specific vendor or a specific manufacturer has taken one generation of a fire alarm panel, they've released a new generation, and you are upgrading from one to the next generation, but staying within that manufacturer's family or that vendor's family. A replacement is actually physically transferring from one manufacturer to a different manufacturer, which usually requires a wholesale or mostly wholesale change from one system to another. So that's the difference. Upgrade stays within the manufacturer's family of products. A replacement is changing the manufacturers of the product.
All right, thank you, Larry. Another question we received is, should product obsolescence be a valid driver to upgrade fire alarm control panels, even if the system is recently installed?
That's a very good question. It is a consideration. However, what you should look at with product obsolescence, also known as end of life or end of service life, is how long that product is going to be maintained as a service product by that vendor. So let's just say a product was released in 2010 and goes end of life in 2025. That'd be pretty typical 15 years, 20 years of life. Almost all manufacturers will then, that's the end of its new life, and it enters a service life that's usually 7 to 10 years. So a product released in 2010 that goes end of life in 2025 would probably have a service life to 2035. So you want to consider the whole service life, that being the time that manufacturer will continue to provide firmware upgrades, software upgrades, equipment, service replacements, that kind of thing. We have had situations where a system is installed right at the end of its life, and now the owner finds out, 1 year into having a system, that their system has gone, quote unquote, end of life. What you really need to look at is the end of service life. So there's a difference from manufacturers about when they sell new equipment versus how long they maintain that equipment in the service life. So you want to ask that question of what is its service life, and then use that end of service life as a potential date to upgrade or replace. Hopefully that date is still in the future, and you can plan accordingly. But we do run into that situations, quite a bit, where new panels come online towards the end of their life, and now suddenly all the owner hears is, well, there's you installed an old piece of equipment, which isn't really the case. It's just a matter of dates. So take a look at the true service life, and all the major manufacturers will provide you that information.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And the next question we have seems to be somewhat related to the previous, but I want to ask it in case there's anything nuanced that you'd like to elaborate on. The question is, if I heard it correctly, though, after 25 years with obsolescence as a main concern, is upgrading even an option? Sound that upgrading is still a viable option, but it somewhat contradicts the first point of 25 years being the ultimate threshold.
Fair, it's a fair point. So 25 years is just that trigger, right? We're offering that up as a trigger point where you as an owner or facility manager need to look at your system. At that 25 year of life, you need to identify what is your path. Most major manufacturers will provide you an upgrade path. You need to decide if that's a viable upgrade path. Many manufacturers offer, again, what we call backwards compatibility. So they come out with a new generation of panel or control unit, and it provides some backwards compatibility. In other words, existing devices can still talk to the new control equipment. For some period of time is normally the case. So upgrade is a very viable path. It can actually save owners a lot of money to stick with their existing provider and provide that upgrade path because of that backwards compatibility. However, often that expires, right? You run out of the ability to actually be backwards compatible based on the age of that. So the longer that time period gets, the less likely you are going to be able to upgrade that piece of equipment, and you're going to need to replace that piece of equipment with new technology. And just as a caveat with that, the new technology may operate differently. It may require a different wire. It may require something different, right? It may require, instead of you replacing one device on that loop, you have to replace all the devices on that loop. So each manufacturer is a little bit different, but as a general rule, the longer the lifespan, the older it is, the more difficult it will be to upgrade and to be backwards compatible. It's just kind of a factor of the technology. I hope that answered the question. Simple age doesn't force you between upgrade and replace, but it can, if that makes sense. It can, but it doesn't, not necessarily with every single situation.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you, Larry. I'll be paraphrasing this next question a little bit, but basically it was from one of the attendees stating that they have an existing fire alarm system that's approaching 20 years old. They're trying to identify, what types of systems or manufacturers to start reaching out to, how they go through that process and identifying the different manufacturers and which ones best suit their needs.
Oh. The best answer to that is to provide contact somebody who can provide you that information in an unbiased fashion. And frankly, Jensen Hughes is that resource, in our opinion. The reason is because if you go to your existing vendor and say, what options do I have I got this 20-year-old system, what options do I have? They're going to say, well, you have widget 1, we have widget 2, you just switch from widget 1 to widget 2, and there you go. Alternatively, if you come to an unbiased source, we can say, yes, you can do that with widget 1 to widget 2, or there's these other manufacturers that provide this type of equipment, and it has this advantage or this disadvantage with that. This is where a compliance audit or an inventory of your system is really helpful, understanding what you have and what you need, and then bridging the gap between those two factors. Providing that unbiased opinion is really the best way to do it, because some manufacturers have self-testing smoke detectors and some don't. Now, you may or may not need that. Some have self-testing notification appliances and some don't. Again, you may or may not need that. So having an unbiased approach to it, a multi-vendor approach, a open source approach, can be very helpful to know what options are available to you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Larry. Another question, and we have about 4 minutes left in the webinar for today, so we want to get through as many of these questions as we can. But if we're not able to address your question today, we'll be sending a follow-up email where we'll be providing responses to the questions that were posted in the chat. So the next question that I see, Larry, is can we define like for like voluntary replacement? Does this mean the same manufacturer must be installed?
Yeah, so this is a great topic. Like for like is also called one for one. And there are a lot of advantages for a one for one or a like for like replacement, especially for the owner and for the vendor of that system, right? It's normally simpler and it's normally less costly. However, many times the words like for like or one for one is a code word for don't tell the HJ or don't do what you really need to do. And that's just I'm just being honest when I say that. You should never allow a contractor or a vendor to convince you that a like for like or a one for one replacement of all devices or notification appliances will either be the right thing to do or that it will be code compliant. If you allow that work to proceed, you may receive a costly surprise when the AHJ refuses to accept that new like for like system. So as time goes by, new dangers and new regulations come into play. So replacing an old smoke detector or a smoke alarm is a great idea, right? You absolutely should do that. But what if that space really needs a combination smoke carbon monoxide detector or alarm? Or what if that storage space that you had is now an employee work area? Well, it means there's totally different requirements for that space. What if you had a space that's now used for e-mobility charging or other kinds of lithium-ion battery concerns? Also, if the original design didn't meet code, it stands to reason that the new system or the replacement like for like system is not going to meet code, right? So the authority having jurisdiction is key in these situations. In fact, the International Fire Code and International Existing Building Code requires you to notify the fire official for, quote, any repairs which include the addition to, alteration of, replacement, or relocation of fire alarm system or other work affecting fire protection or life safety. So having the AHJ as a partner in this becomes really important. And the like for like, one for one creates a lot of issues in that regard. So that is certainly a challenge. While it provides some advantages for the owner and certainly the vendor, it may not be the right thing to do.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And before we wrap up, there was one comment earlier that the QR code link went to the Jensen Hughes website saying that the registration was closed. That has been corrected and is now available for registering. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for dialing in and attending today and asking the questions. There were several more questions that we weren't able to get to today, but we will go through these and provide written responses to the questions that we were not able to address and get them distributed to everyone that joins today's call. So we really hope that you're able to register for our upcoming webinars. We really greatly appreciate your time today and look forward to the continued questions. And if there's anything specific related to any of your projects or facilities, please reach out to Larry, Mike, or myself directly. Thank you all very much for your time today.